Ladies and gentlemen, again, welcome to UTT's campus at NAPO, and to this our now annual response to the national budget. The appropriation bill for fiscal year 2014-2015 was presented in the House of Parliament on September 8, 2014, by the Honourable Minister of Finance. It has now become tradition that the impact of the proposed implementation and plans be evaluated by our own subject matter experts here at UTT. This discussion will not only span the now revolutionized education industry and education sector, but will also address issues in transport, health administration, environment, energy, security, and public order, and of course, issues involving and affecting our country's youth. Brother Kwesi Mutema is the Deputy Chairman of the Board of Governors at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. He holds a Master's of Business Administration and a postgraduate certification in Business Administration from Heriot-Watt University. He has also served as Director of Sport and Discipline at the National Academy of Business, Arts and Computing. Brother Mutema has been a board member at the Butler Institute of Lifelong Learning, where, as a lecturer, he led courses in time and financial management, as well as customer service. Brother Mutema is the deputy political leader of the National Joint Action Committee and was a candidate in the 2010 general elections. From 2003 to 2009, he led the National Action Cultural Committee as its chairman and was responsible for planning and promoting major cultural events, including the Young Kings and Veterans Calypso competitions, Kings Go Forth Calypso Production, Stars of Gold Calypso Awards, and the Jahaji Massacre Commemoration. He is an entrepreneur, having operated his own catering business, and has coordinated the Save One Scholarship Program, an initiative which has provided scholarships to young persons of high risk and depressed communities. Today, Brother Mutema represents the chairman of our Board of Governors, who is unavoidably absent, and indeed our university, as he welcomes all of you, our guests, to this milestone event. Deputy Chairman.
Thank you, Lana. I don't know if I should be thanking you for revealing my whole life history here this morning, but I think many of you now know more of me than you didn't know before. To members of the board of University of Trinidad and Tobago, our Professor Diana Ryan Singh, our beloved President, to our Provost, Dr. Fazal Ali, our Vice President IT, Mr. Dev Maraj, who has recently come on board, welcome. To our moderator this morning, Ms. Lana Alad, who is our Program Administrator at our Academy of Arts, Letters, Culture, and Public Affairs. Professor Rodney Ramboli, our program professor at our Center for Information and Communication Technology, Professor Valerie Stout, the energetic Professor Valerie Stout, our program leader in Environmental Science and Management, Mr. Adrian Bihari, our senior instructor of Maritime Studies, Dr. Meredith Patton, our interim program leader and associate professor, Institute for Criminology and Public Safety, Mr. Neil Allen, our program leader in Energy Systems and Petroleum, and Mr. Darren Ganga, senior manager in Sport and Recreation, Mr. Kendall Jagannath, our president of the UTT Executive Guild, and members of the Guild who are present, Mr. I.D. Stewart, who are Masters in Health Administration, or student in Masters of Health Administration, all faculty and staff of our university, all students present, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, all welcome. It is my privilege this morning not only to welcome all of you at this UTT's response to the 2015 national budget. Also, I bring greetings from our chairman, Mr. Curtis Manchun, who is unavoidably absent, and also our Board of Governors of UTT. Today's panel discussion on the 2015 budget will address issues that are important and relevant to our nation's continued. It is fitting that as a national university, that UTT engages in fruitful and informative dialogue on these pertinent matters. UTT is privileged to be staffed by competent and very respected academics, and some of whom have graciously taken their time out from their busy schedules to be here today, and their schedules are very busy. We can also boast of very gifted and quite intelligent students, and some you will hear from today as well in this presentation. I would like to thank all of these people for making themselves available for this what I consider a very important national purpose. And I know that we all eagerly await to hear their contributions this morning. I would like to give a special welcome, however, to all students who are present. You're often referred to as our nation's future. However, that future depends very much on what you do today. So that your presence here, I think, is not only very noteworthy, very significant, but I think very necessary as well. I would have only liked and hoped we would have been able to have many more of our students here, particularly our secondary school students. However, as we move on, I will urge you all to listen very carefully and to participate fully as well in the exercise. For as we better understand the plans for our country's development, we will be able to better ascertain our role in this very important objective. Indeed, this budget concerns all of you, in fact, all of us, in many ways that go beyond just what relate to the education initiatives directly. I hope that all present, particularly, as I said, our students, would listen very eagerly and as well ask the questions when those opportunities present themselves sometime later this morning. Today's session obviously will explore what this budget, $64.6 billion budget for this fiscal year of 2015, what it will mean for Trinidad and Tobago, particularly with respect to very key areas, whether it be education, crime, health, sport, and you will hear from representatives from the university who are involved in development where these various disciplines are concerned. It is important that UTT as an entrepreneurial university be engaged with and be responsive to the needs of our society in order that we may be capable of confidently confronting and solving the nation's problem through professional education, research, and development. As such, I congratulate all those who have worked hard to make this venture possible, and I welcome all of you again this morning to this what I consider very significant event, and which will contribute in some way to the development of our society, bringing clearer understanding to our 2015 national budget and pointing some way forward to all of us. So once again, thank you. And as I said, we look forward to hearing from all our presenters this morning. Thank you all.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, you will agree with me that we at UTT have a very special appreciation and consideration for what was factored into this year's budget for the education industry, and more so for the tertiary education industry. Education is not only the building block for future careers and academia, but it stands as the most viable option for our development as professionals and as a productive and informed society. At this juncture, we begin our panel discussions. Before I introduce our first panelist, there are a few additional House announcements. The first is that there will be a question and answer session at the end of all of the presentations. We have factored so far 30 minutes for that. We ask, therefore, that you make notes, that you hold your questions, your queries, and your comments for that particular session. The head, or the most senior academic position at UTT, is held by our own Dr. Fazal Ali. As Senior Vice President and Provost of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, he is also the chairman of the Teaching Service Commission of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Dr. Ali, I'm told, was also instrumental in establishing the Institute of Critical Thinking and the Evening University at the University of the West Indies, the other university. Acting upon a UN mandate from former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, Dr. Ali was able to successfully secure the sum of 2 million euros from the government of Spain to fund the work program of the University Consortium of Small Island States, or the UCSIS. Dr. Ali has also successfully secured funding from the European Union to finance the Information and Communication Technology, or the ICT platform of the Caribbean Court of Justice, the CCJ in Trinidad and Tobago. I am humbled to introduce to the lectern to discuss and to present on the impact on the education sector, our Provost and Senior Vice President, Dr. Fazal Ali.
All protocols observed. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have chosen to speak about the entrepreneurial state as it relates to the budget, funding education, the economic challenge. It is the entrepreneurial state that leads technical change rather than follow. Such a state places the focus on entrepreneurship and on the process of innovation as a source of economic growth. This was hinted to by Marx, but never made into the centerpiece of a theory of growth in business, in the business cycle, the way Schumpeter made it. Creative destruction or invention, whether of a new product or a new technique or a new design, invention or innovation, tends to put some enterprises out of business and encourage other businesses to become more successful, with the outcome that the entire society becomes better off. It is the entrepreneurial state that is at the forefront of doing the revolutionary bit. All the technologies that make an iPhone smart were all state-funded. The internet, GPS, and touchscreen displays. Google was funded by the National Science Foundation in the United States. The most valuable asset of the entrepreneurial state is therefore talent. The investment of the Trinidad and Tobago government in education in the 2014-15 budget aims to deliver real and substantial benefits to drive that process and includes opening the gate to better opportunities and life chances for citizens, sustaining a cutting-edge skills base that supplies a talent-thick workforce, and ensuring that the Trinidad and Tobago economy has the necessary knowledge workers for long-term growth. Recent growth in the number of graduates has led to some concern over whether there are too many students in the system as well as too many graduates who now leave Trinidad and Tobago seeking further education abroad and or employment. But these arguments are blinkered and short-sighted. The evidence shows that employment and earnings outcomes for graduates remain far better than for those without university education. Second, there is a great risk to the Trinidad and Tobago economy if future demand of employers for high-quality skilled knowledge workers is not satisfied. The economic challenge for Trinidad and Tobago is to ensure that this demand is met and the economic potential of Trinidad and Tobago is fulfilled. The investment which the state is making in the education sector from ECCE to PhD is guided by a deep understanding of the difference between economic growth and development. Growth refers to a quantitative increase in output and income. Growth in its biological sense means that the organism gets physically bigger. Development means that there are qualitative changes. The organism becomes faster, smarter, psychologically more mature, more capable of dealing with or adapting to the environment, more robust, and more resilient. Growth is therefore necessary, but not a sufficient condition for development. Development cannot be imposed from without. It is a creative social process, and its central nervous system, the matrix which nourishes it, is located in the memes of the cultural sphere, those blocks of cultural information that are transmitted and altered across generations, very much like genes. Development is ultimately not a matter of money or physical capital or foreign exchange, but of the capacity of a society to tap the root of the creative genius of the people, to free up and empower all citizens to use their reasoned agency to make actual any idea ignited by the slow fuse of the imagination. We must note, however, that any long-term substantial increase in the number of graduates has implications for funding the higher education sector in Trinidad and Tobago. It is clear that income flowing from increased numbers under the present fee regime would help institutions cover ongoing costs of provision, assuming real costs are covered by the additional fee income. However, additional funding for capital and infrastructure costs would be needed if Trinidad and Tobago is to move towards the provision of a high-quality, world-class student experience. Talented foreign students willing to come and study alongside local students here in Trinidad in an environment of tolerance will drive the innovation and invention agenda. In addition, the fees from the foreign students would be used to fund research around indigenous knowledge that can change the world. That is why the government is establishing and investing in the Tamina campus of the National University. But you may ask, where is the market for this foreign student body? I will illustrate with data from just one country, the case of India. The transformation of the Indian higher education system is being driven by economic and demographic change. By 2020, India would be the world's third largest economy, with a correspondingly rapid growth in the size of its middle class. Currently, over 50% of India's population is under 25. By 2020, India will outpace China as the country with the largest tertiary-aged population. However, India has a low rate of enrollment in higher education, at only 18% when compared to 26% in China and 36% in Brazil. There is enormous unmet demand for higher education. By 2020, the Indian government aims to achieve 30% gross enrollment, which will mean providing 40 million university spaces. This is an increase in 14 million in 6 years. However, the higher education system in India is beset by issues of quality, shortage of faculty, outdated curricula, separation of research from teaching, few opportunities for interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary research, and a weak ecosystem for innovation. In summary, it is the duty of the entrepreneurial state to fund the nurturing of a talent pool that will drive innovation and invention that will make the country competitive. It is the duty of such a state to fund the establishment of the infrastructure and the learning environment that will enable the reasoned agency of its citizens to overcome all unfreedoms. Development is freedom. Freedom to think, freedom to be critical, freedom to resist and to break new ground, freedom to invent, freedom to dream, because the world remains largely an unfinished, incomplete project. If we build a learning environment and invest in the development of talent and skills, the foreign students will come, not just from India, but creatives from everywhere will come to work and learn in teams with other creative persons on products that change us and make the world adapt to us humans. The fact is, if we invest more in education, we will not need to invest so heavily in security. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. The control room via the stage manager has asked me to remind presenters that for your convenience, there is a screen which is directly opposite to you when you stand here at the lectern. The screen illustrates a stopwatch, so then you will be apprised of your 7 minutes while you're at the lectern. At the point that the stopwatch begins to blink red, it means that you are in the red, and they are now forcing me to call people off the stage. So please be reminded. You may not be able to see from where you are, but when you're standing at the lectern, you'll know exactly what I'm speaking about. I quote directly from the Appropriation Bill 2015 as it was laid in the Parliament. The second component in the commitment to a more inclusive society is a focus on providing quality health care and medical services to the national community. Individual responsibility for his or her well-being represents a critical aspect of overall health care. It is imperative that citizens monitor and manage actively their own health regimes, thereby reducing the demand on the country's health system. There is a focused attention on creating client-centered experiences and solutions which represent the needs, abilities, and uniqueness of those members of our national community who require quality health care. Today, in the sphere of health, Edie Stewart, a nursing professional with training in both general and psychiatric nursing, is a final year student enrolled in the Masters in Health Administration program here at UTT. Prior to this, he attended the University of the West Indies, where he pursued and successfully completed a Bachelor of Science in Nursing Oncology degree with upper second-class honors. Apart from his experience at Mount Vernon Cancer Center in England, Mr. Stewart was trained in the clinical management of HIV at the University of Washington. He also received certification by the American Medical Technologists. Mr. Stewart has served as clinical coordinator at Global Financial Brokers Limited, where he collaborated with many local private healthcare institutions and healthcare practitioners to ensure that clients receive the optimum level of care. Presently, he is an oncology nurse at Northwest Regional Health Authority, and his professional affiliations include the American Medical Technologists and the Trinidad and Tobago Registered Nurses Association. To present to us in the sphere of health, please welcome Edie Stewart.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. While I set up, let me just make some apologies. My presentation should have been vetted by my program coordinator, Dr. Carrington, but unfortunately, because Mr. Ford Khan, Honorable Ford Khan, only presented on Wednesday, I had very little time to prepare and thus allowed her to vet. So, as I begin, all protocols observed. I'm here from cohort 6, Masters in Health Administration. My cohort students are across there. Make sure this is... Right, so my areas of focus will be good governance principles, comparisons with some previous budgets that the Minister of Health gave, and some achievements and shortfalls. I basically want to phrase it according to the good governance principles outlined by OECD 2013, and they highlighted 10 draft principles which policymakers and practitioners really should follow when developing policies, such as the budget. So it will allow for positive impact on the citizens' life. I pulled out 3 of them, and you all could assist me when we go through the budget and previous budgets that the minister gave to see if it is 1, forward-looking, 2, if it presents public finances, and 3, if we are getting value for money. So basically, after reviewing the 4 budget presentations that this honorable minister actually gave, I kind of broke it down into a concept map where the government basically wants to improve the health of the population. They give the Ministry of Health the task through the strategic plan, 2012-2015, and they're also trying to formulate the Health Service Accreditation Council, actually. The strategic plan is supposed to guide what the RHAs are doing, the annual service agreements, and also supposed to guide the interrelationship with public-private partnerships, the PPPs. Health Service Accreditation is supposed to monitor both the RHAs and the private organizations. So most people are not aware of that. The Ministry of Health is directly responsible for private institutions, but that needs to be addressed somewhat. So as we move on, comparison of previous budgets, the 2012 highlights, their focus was improve the nation's health services. Some new projects came about. They talked about the ASAs. One of the first times they were actually signed off on by all the RHAs was around this time. They talked about the Health Accreditation Council. They spoke about some policy initiatives, adverse events policy. This one was actually implemented. The maternal health policy and the 10-year manpower plan for health sector. This, I was not able to find these documents. Recruiting of healthcare practitioners from local and abroad, the regional and abroad, foreign. Some intersectoral collaboration program for developing hospitals he spoke about, and he touched on NCDs, non-communicable diseases. In 2013, the focus was on prevention of CNCDs. He actually made a statement, the thrust of my budget contribution would be prevention. However, in his statements, he went on to speak about client-centeredness via HMS, which is Health Management Information Systems, reduction of outsourcing. He went on to say how the outsourcing came down from 41 to 1.1 million, 2012. Some ongoing initiatives, he spoke about building of hospitals, recruiting of healthcare practitioners from foreign countries. He also went on to speak about some other stuff that he said in the previous budget, subspecialty training with Johns Hopkins and UE, public-private partnerships with Moraine Eye Center. He spoke about the National Cancer Strategy. I highlighted the HPV because this was actually completed. But as we know, the Oncology Center is still in a work in progress. The Cancer Plan is still a work in progress. The IAE, International Atomic Energy Agency, this was actually signed on to, I think we paid 1.5 million to actually sign on to this, so this is operational. Palliative care is actually being rolled out in the North Central Health Authority in Cora there, so that is being rolled out. He also went on with dealing with prevention. The only area really which he actually dealt with prevention was, he spoke about lifestyle changes and dietary habits, and he spoke about the fight the fat. This actually came off in 2012, 2013. 2014 highlights, wow. He spoke about service-oriented medicine. I'm watching the time here, so I will just hurry up. So, so previous decisions, so he went back basically talking about HMAS, National Health Insurance Systems, building our hospitals, recruiting healthcare practitioners, and Health Accreditation Council. So some of these things just repeating. So we come to the present budget, 2015 highlights. He focused on creating client-centered experiences. And he spoke about health campaigns, smoking, NCDs. However, he went back again with HMS, National Health Insurance. So we basically see the trend that a lot of these things, Health Accreditation Council, recruiting of each healthcare practitioners. We don't know how we're going to do this because our salaries are extremely low compared to the foreign ones. What he is able to do is get the CARICOM nurses. So they have already started coming in, the Grenadian, Cubans, and what? They already coming in. The subspecialty training, this is woefully inadequate at the present time. We still have a shortage of a lot of specialty areas, district health visitors, intensive care nurses, but there's work being done, ongoing work. Hopefully this pays off. Present budget expenditure, as we see, there's a general, more or less 8%, between 7.5% to 8% expenditure as per the total appropriation when you look over the statistics. So it's basically around the same amount we normally give, and this is normally around what world standards is also. Actually, we are above world standards in our percentage to the appropriation, percentage of appropriation. Quick graph, I just highlighted these three areas: education, national security, and health. These are the three largest areas in the budget, and show how the pie, the financial appropriation pie, actually, the majority comes from these areas. WHO actually assessed us, and this is some of our achievements, but on the right-hand side, do we have a program to actually reduce non-communicable diseases? Do we have an area to reduce communicable diseases? And you'll see a lot of no's going down there. So we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the policy and the program to actually reduce, to achieve some of the targets we aiming to achieve. In summation, Health Service Accreditation Council, we need to get this up and running. This is one of the major aspects where we could ensure quality, both in the public and private sector. He spoke about it being a symbiotic relationship with Accreditation Council of Trinidad and Tobago. So we need to get this up and running. Actually, this was spoke about since in the Joint Select Committee of Parliament in 2006, that this be established. Strategic plan, this is what we really should be following. The ministry set out these guidelines. We really should be following these things. So this is supposed to guide the annual service agreements of each RHA. And in the annual service agreements, they spoke about specific performance indicators, which we are not meeting, but we seem to focus heavily on, and it's basically the population fall. We seem to focus that success is measured on how many hospitals and health centers you build, but it really supposed to be focusing on some service quality targets where the reduction of waiting times and stuff like this. So in summation, basically this is some of our proposal, focus on the expanded care model, and I wish I had time to go through this, probably in the question and answer session. I thank you for your indulgence in my overtime. So thank you again.
Over the past academic year, I've been given the privilege to host, on behalf of UTT and for UTT, many public events. This is the most difficult. I'm feeling really very badly. So I apologize in advance, but I'm told again by control room that we are following the TED format. So I'm asked to remind you again, presenters, 7 minutes, and then the light flashes red. And I quote again from the Finance Appropriation Bill 2015, quoting the Honorable Minister, "Another component is the component to provide an efficient and reliable and affordable transportation system for our citizens, as well as to support the system with comfortable and state-of-the-art facilities." End of quote. In support of this statement, 13 measures are listed by the Honorable Minister. I will observe my 7-minute deadline, and instead of presenting those 13 points, I will go on to tell you that Mr. Adrian Bihari will present today on the component of transport. He holds the Bachelor of Science degree in Economics from the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, and the Master of Science degree in General Maritime Administration from the World Maritime University in Sweden. He completed his on-the-job training attachment at the U.S. Department of Transportation Maritime Administration at the Office of Ports and Intermodal Development and the World Bank, Washington, USA. Mr. Bihari is a senior instructor attached to the Bachelor of Science in Nautical Science and Maritime Operations and the Master of Science in Operational Maritime Management programs, both of which operate out of our Chaguaramas campus. He is a specialist in the field of maritime economics, port master planning, strategic port planning, and port operations management. Mr. Bihari is a member of the International Association of Maritime Economists, where he was recently appointed to serve as an associate editor of the Professionals in Practice e-magazine. His career as a maritime professional also includes over 25 years of experience at the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. Please, at this time, welcome Mr. Adrian Bihari.
Person. No, we press no. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. My presentation this morning is divided into 3 sections. Firstly, the fundamentals of the national economy. Secondly, the critical issues affecting the maritime transportation sector. And finally, a review of the budget in relation to the maritime transportation sector. I will also touch on other aspects of the transportation sector as they are relevant. This is one of the 4 ships I bought for the water taxi project in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm very proud of this. The macroeconomic fundamentals of the national economy as we move from 2013 to 2014.
appear to be quite stable and show that we have recovered from the decline over the period 2008-2009, which impacted on the economy. All of these figures are self-explanatory, and I don't want to get the hook, so I'm going to move on. Weaknesses relate to employment. We still have a large amount of disguised employment in the economy in relation to programs like CPEP and so on, which others have spoken about. I expect over the next 10 years, as we continue to grow and develop the human capital in our country, we're going to see less of these types of make-work programs and more sustained productive employment, and therefore an increase in production levels in the country. The growth rate can be better than 2.35, and we need to work towards improving that. The debt to GDP ratio for a country that is sustained by revenues derived from the oil and gas economy should not be 43%. It should perhaps be in the order of 25% to 30%. Okay, so what are the critical issues affecting our maritime transport sector? One, growth in the national economy and international trade, which impacts on the national shipping and port transportation system. Two, growth in general cargo and container throughput, cargo movements. And three, berth and port congestion resulting from overheating of economic activity and demands and stresses placed on the transportation system. This is a graphic that indicates that the total commercial port capacity in the country is of the order of 700,000 TEUs. And in 2014, we expected to hit this ceiling and therefore begin to experience inefficiencies in the system, diseconomies of scale, and so on, affecting the trend. In other words, we need to expand the infrastructure with respect to our commercial seaports. Secondly, there's a very important development taking place right around the corner from us at the Panama Canal, which will double the transit capacity of the canal by 2015. It will impact in terms of the type of ships plying the region. Vessels will now increase in size from 304 meters to 366 meters. The beam of the vessel, or the width, will increase to 49 meters. The draft, how deep in the water the vessel go, will now be increased from 12 to 15.3 meters. The bulk tonnage movements from 62,000 metric tons to 140,000 metric tons. Very, very serious changes. The nominal capacity for container ships, liner ships, from 5,000 TEUs to 13,000 TEUs. The deadweight tonnage of the ships themselves will increase from 85,000 deadweight tons to 180,000 deadweight tons. And finally, the total annual capacity of the canal will increase from 275 million to 600 million tons. So serious changes will come about as a consequence of the expansion of the canal, which will impact on ship and port technology. Impact on port development. We are going to require deeper draft channels, basins, and berths. We'll require longer berths to accommodate the longer vessels. The new Panamax ship-to-shore cranes with a greater height and outreach, RTGs, rubber-tired gantry cranes on the terminal storage areas will increase in height and width, and there will be a requirement to increase the container terminal storage capacity further. There is an opportunity that will impact on the ship repair industry. As we move to vessels of increasing size, there's an opportunity to create new models designed to benefit from investments related to repair of larger size vessels. There are also risks associated with this. The impact of the national budget on the transportation sector, we have identified through a review of the budget statement 2015, impacts on the ports, yachting, ship repair, marina, FDI incentive legislation to attract investment, foreign direct investment, use of the PPP model of investment, aviation impacts, ferry service impacts, shipping app legislation about to be passed in Parliament, the motor vehicle authority to be created shortly, the proposal to procure 100 CNG buses, remove import duties on hybrid vehicles, and the continued development of our highways infrastructure. For us in the maritime sector, our immediate impact points, ports, yachting, ship repair, marina, ferry services, using the greater use of the PPP model of investment to attract foreign investment, FDI legislation, and the Shipping Act. In reviewing the budget statement, we observe in the statement itself presented by the Minister of Finance an allocation of $1.984 billion to the Ministry of Transport. However, if you go onto the Ministry of Finance's website, under estimates of expenditure, the figure quoted is $1.64 billion. I've sought clarification from the Permanent Secretary in this matter, and there's a variance of $820 million that requires reconciliation because the Ministry of Finance is insisting that its figure is the correct one. That's bad news for the Ministry of Transport if it's not reconciled in their favor. Point Lisa's industrial port development. The budget statement refers to an initial ratings report recently completed, and which indicates government's intention to divest its shareholding of 51% in Plibdeco and to invite new equity, private equity participation, no doubt related to capital investments along the road. The port itself, because of the previous graph I showed you, has developed an expansion plan designed to accommodate the new Panamax vessels and to create a 400-acre industrial estate and logistics park. All of this will now go on hold pending the outcome of the IPO related to Plibdeco. That's bad news for Plibdeco, but good news for the government, because if the government can withdraw out of Plibdeco and attract private investment into future growth and development of the estate, it means therefore that it can now allocate those resources to other national development projects. There is, coming out of this proposed expansion, however, once it gets underway, the opportunity to relocate entities like National Flour Mills out of Port of Spain and into an industrial port complex such as Point Lisas. That will alleviate some port congestion in the city center. Energy ports, Point Galeota. The recently commissioned Point Galeota Energy and Logistics Port is designed to attract support services from disparate locations into a well-organized logistics area. There is a proposal to support service industries with seed funding of 50 million TT dollars in matching grants for innovation needs of companies. This will help the small enterprises to grow and develop in support of downstream activities related to the oil and gas sector. There's an opportunity to relocate energy support services out of the Chaguaramas Peninsula, and those of you who use the road going down that way will observe a number of industrial vehicles moving to and fro and a general traffic congestion at certain points certain times of the day. So there's an opportunity, if we can rezone and relocate these activities, that we may alleviate some of the congestion in Chaguaramas and open up and create additional space for the further growth and development of the yachting and marina sector. Labidco Industrial Port Estate. There's a $2.1 billion Juniper project designed by BG. Coming out of that, there is a heavy input with respect to fabrication of the Juniper platform, with the possibility to create 300 jobs. This is a welcome development at Labidco. They had previously built a platform for BP a couple of years ago. The Labre Union Estate at Brighton. Mitsubishi Massey proposes a US $850 million investment in methanol to dimethyl ether plants. There are two plants under consideration, methanol, dimethyl ether. The project completion date has been pushed back to January 2015, and the whole idea behind it is the production of methanol from natural gas and dimethyl ether to replace propane and diesel. Labre, not mentioned in the budget, but sufficiently important for us to discuss it today. China Harbor Engineering has proposed a commercial port and dry dock using a $500 million loan funded by China Exim Bank under the PPP model of development. If this comes about, it will become an off-the-book expenditure. So we need to note that because it therefore represents a possible addition to the national budget. What are the challenges involved in locating a commercial port at La Brea? One, the population demographics. At present, the Port of Port of Spain serves a transient population of about 200,000 people on a daily basis moving in and around the city center. It is responsible for direct, indirect, and induced employment related to cargo handling activity so that the city center enjoys a symbiotic relationship with the port. In the case of Point Lisa Split Deco and its industrial estate, it served the borough of Chaguanas and Couva for a total population of about 100,000 persons. In addition to which, Point Lisa serves the greater regions of North Trinidad and South Trinidad. On the other hand, La Brea and Point Fortin combined has a population of about 20,000 persons. So immediately we have a problem in terms of the population size in that region and how it will impact on port development in terms of human capital and support services for that new commercial port. Secondly, if your centers of industry, your locus of industry, manufacturing, commerce, retail, distribution is located along the east-west corridor and Chaguanas, and you set up a port system that is on the Southwest Peninsula, what does that mean in terms of distance, inland transportation costs, and impact on inflation? It is going to drive up inflation, and therefore we need to look at these kinds of issues. The UTT has proposed to conduct a port city hinterland study, and we await the outcome of the application made to the EDF for research grant funding on this matter. The yachting industry, UTT has been earmarked by the government to promote the yachting industry through advanced training courses in yacht building and maintenance, ship repair, supervisory management, waste management, and environmental management. Aviation campus, UTT has been called upon to provide building of aviation campus at Camden Field. There's also a proposal for divestment under the PPP model with respect to the Piaco International Airport and the ANR Robinson Airport. Highways infrastructure continues. San Fernando to Point Fortin, Golconda is already commissioned, Rivulet Road, Beetham Highway, Digger Martin, Southern Main Road, removal of traffic lights. PTSC, 100 CNG buses, 35 filling station, the creation of a new company by the NGC CNG Company Limited. Inter-island ferry service, we have recently leased the Superfast Galicia. There are issues related to the technical management of the service. It is done by a Canadian firm. No proposals have been made with respect to local management. THA Marina, there's a proposed to be built a marina in PT True Lagoon, Tobago Plantations, Lowlands. This is a first for Tobago. They do not have established marinas and a yachting industry in Tobago. Conclusion, stable economic fundamentals, key sectors targeted for development, use of the PPP model, divestment of government shareholding, promotion of foreign direct investment, Panama Canal expansion. Major changes will come to the maritime transportation sector over the next 5 years, and these changes will present opportunities and challenges for training and development at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you, Mr. Bihari. Panelists, they have instituted a flare at the back of the room. My fear is that they will ask me to do something if the flare and the counter are not working. So please bear it in mind. Environment, like education, remains a topical, almost controversial issue, especially in today's conversation. An applied statistician and scientist, Professor Valerie Stout, you don't get extra 7 minutes, Prof.
But that's why I'm trying to save time.
You don't want me, I could,
Forget-
okay.
I have a very short bio. You could forget it. Let me just, that's 1 minute, 1 minute less. Thank you, darling. What I would like, though, is my presentation. Sit up. And the clicker. See that? I don't want to see that moving until I'm set, eh? I gave you all, I took away the bio. Yeah. Okay. My presentation is going to be very evocative in that it will speak to you itself. So there are very few words. The title, which is a little bit dramatic, is taken from a minstrel band, The Sacred and Profane. And I hope I could substantiate my thesis as well as Minstrel did in his carnival band. I'm going to deal very, very briefly with the current provisions in the 2015 budget, and instead talk about what environmental studies at UTT would have liked to have seen in the budget. So these are the current provisions, and they are done in a series of rows, getting greener and greener as we come to the end. There are 6 provisions. The first 3, and of the first 3, 2 of them have been alluded to by Mr. Bihari. The first one is methanol to dimethyl ether, CNG stations, those 2 were mentioned, and then the establishment of hybrid and electric vehicles. Those 3 all replace conventional fuels and eventually so all 3 of these replace conventional fuels and lead to a reduction in the carbon footprint. Then we have the Beetham wastewater project, which will divert gray water, which is water that is treated but not that treated, to industrial action, and potable water. The higher quality treated water will be directed to potable water, so this will result in saving water, which incidentally is a pollution prevention. Use of a resource is considered pollution. Then at the end, we have watershed rehabilitation and money given to CPEP Marine. The rehabilitation will plant 1.3 million trees. CPEP Marine will remove flotsam, which will essentially floating solid waste, and that will improve aesthetics, reduce the carbon footprint, and protect marine life. The thing about this is we need to bear in mind 2 things. One is that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and whether or not it causes global warming is a global problem. A local problem is the filth we see in our rivers and mangroves. The UTT Environmental Studies Department, which has a program project in the Environmental Science and Management Master's Program, annually measures as part of each research project several rivers and mangroves in Trinidad. We did a couple of projects in Tobago as well, but not with mangroves, with destruction of the coastline, and that's another environmental problem. But the fact remains is what we see up close and personal is awful. Locally, it's awful. These protections are for essentially the atmosphere. Even the saving of water, if water is saved, but energy is used in the process, if the process is not properly done, then what happens is, what you gain on the swings, you lose on the roundabout. Now, a more broad-based approach, and if those are implemented, it will be good. But essentially, it will be like trying to solve chikungunya 1 mosquito at a time. So there is a little bit more, our broad-based approach for comprehensive protections of air, water, and land on this. This is a thesis, a simple thesis, and I've sort of used a fault tree type of nomenclature, bastardized fault tree. At the top is the event, environmental pollution, and it's caused by industrial and pollution coming from ordinary citizens. Now, these are considered not gates. It means these do not lead to that. If we had effective policies and laws, compliance and enforcement, education and awareness, we would not have ordinary citizen pollution or industry pollution coming up here. Now, this is given the same color because the education and awareness pertains to the ordinary citizen. The industries are well aware of what they should be doing, even though they're not doing it. My thesis is that if we effected these things, we would not get this pollution and that. And in this particular case, education and awareness will lead to what I call, well, what is called citizen science, which in turn will make compliance easier. So now I'm going to let some pictures tell the story. I'll start with the profane, where my definition of profanity in this case is anything that sullies. So these are all oil spills around Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm going to focus on this one. And now let's tell the story. This is it. Okay? And I'm going to come back to these people here who are essentially just ordinary residents with no HSC protection. But we'll come back to them. So this is the profane, okay? And when we talk about, these are our mangroves, which are so vitally important. When we talk about protection and compliance, this is not just about for accidents. This is also for maintenance, okay? This is Coffee Beach. Note the houses. The houses are right there, and the oil is right in the houses. Let me just take you back one. Okay, that's a house. This is a house right here. So now we're going to have the residents tell their own story. That's a story. This is a story. They gathered so they could pour it back out and show you exactly how much is there. Watch this man's face. Okay, this is a story. Obvious stories. Okay, this is the sacred. Now we see them using, look at this, ordinary dispersal, supposedly EcoSperse. The Environmental Studies Department was there, and they told us it was EcoSperse. In fact, it was Corexit, which causes all of the oil to ball up, go to the bottom, and give you socks like what we saw that guy had. Okay, now we have members of the community who have been engaged for cleanup. In truth and in fact, this is in itself profanity because it's a danger to these people. Now, this is notice no bathing, and this came from this. Not yet clean, but it shows you the beauty that was lost. And very quickly, now we come to the citizen science. This guy is a Trinidadian studying at Auburn University. And his doctoral research was on the reefs of Toco. And he engaged the residents of Toco, these people. This person here is not a scientist. This person is a citizen. This person is a citizen with Stanton Belford. And never doubted a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Anthropologist Margaret Mead. So now I want to show you the sacred. What we need to protect. Toco reef life. And I hope you can see it. It's much clearer on this. But all of this beauty, all of this comes. And if you go back to the last, you see what Stanton has done is he has made posters out of what he found and put them in the Toco Community Center. So the residents of Toco help him make measurements, and they are aware of what they're protecting. And that awareness leads them to take care of it, whether Stanton is here or not, because he studied at Auburn, and he's now an assistant professor. There is this little species, I have no idea what it is, but it needs protecting. There is this. There is Stanton looking over the reefs, and there's my final thesis adjusted. So now the not gate is, if we have education and awareness, we will get less ordinary citizen pollution. I now have a minus sign where before I had a plus because this comes out of the equation, and it does not lead to environmental pollution. So this, brought about by this, which will give us more of this, will give us this and less of that. Okay, that's it. Right.
I was so afraid I would have to pull Professor Stout off the stage. Kendall Jagannath is a final year student at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, pursuing a bachelor's degree in education at our Corinth campus. He has served as the Public Relations Officer and President of the Corinth chapter of UTT Student Guild and is presently the Executive Student Guild President of the UTT. Kendall is involved with one of the most recognized drama workshops in the country, Irie Theatre Production. He is also a freelance radio presenter. Today, Kendall presents to us and shares with us the students' perspective and the perspective of, well, indeed, the Guild. Kendall.
All protocols observed. I'd like to humbly add my voice to the discussions in the public fora on behalf of my constituents of the Students' Guild of the University of Trinidad and Tobago on the recently presented national budget. Under the theme, Empowering Our People Through Sustained Economic Growth and Prosperity, Senator the Honorable Larry Howard, Minister of Finance and Economy, presented a $65 billion budget for the fiscal year 2014-2015, the largest budget to date in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. It adhered religiously to the medium-term policy framework 2011-2014, which was developed by the then Ministry of Planning and the Economy under the theme, Innovation for Lasting Prosperity. At the outset, the nexus among the theme of the 2014-2015 budget, the medium-term policy framework, and the University of Trinidad and Tobago is apparent. UTT operates with the mission of education for employment, entrepreneurship, and economic development. UTT can and does function as a vehicle to achieve the objectives of the current policy and economic policies. Government has also stated its objective towards the development of a knowledge-driven society. I'd like to offer some commentary and constructive criticism on several crucial facets of the budget, those being education, security, economic development, and diversification. The cornerstone of growth in any society, especially in knowledge-based society, is education. The significance of education cannot be overstated as Trinidad and Tobago pursues sustainable development. The importance of this sector transcends political boundaries. As noted by the late Dr. Eric Williams, the future of our nation is in the children's school bags. The education sector received the largest allocation overall, some $10.126 billion. Also quite laudable is the pronouncement that the government assistance for tertiary education, which we know as the GATE program, shall continue to be available. I'm sure this allays the angst and fears of many young people in Trinidad and Tobago. This budget also speaks to several major projects for the expansion of the tertiary education sector towards the generation of a knowledge-based society. The government's commitment towards education can hardly be critiqued as insignificant. However, the critics have been garish where it concerns economic development and diversification. Trinidad and Tobago's oil and gas resources are certainly not infinite. Whilst we are assured that our reserves are sufficient for the medium-term outlook, it goes without saying that there is a real need for economic diversification to form part of the thrust towards sustained economic development. I'd like to proffer that UTT has been among the leaders for economic diversification, innovation, and economic development. Education is not often conceived as the most direct way to engender economic diversification and development, but it sets the stage, lays the groundwork, if you will, to facilitate this in the long term. Long after our hydrocarbon reserves are depleted, Trinidad and Tobago would have evolved into a skills-based service economy, with UTT playing a critical role. The Student Guild of UTT lauds the efforts to continue to engender economic development and diversification through education. Another sore point in our society is crime and security. This is an issue facing all nations, especially so in developing countries like ours. Crime has many causes, but the lack of economic opportunity, lack of access to economic and social opportunity, and poverty are the most popularly cited causes. The budget may be criticized in that it focuses on the restoration of security and order through reactive militaristic interventions. However, the expansion of and focus on the education sector seeks indirectly to address the root causes of crime, economic and social dislocation. Obviously, access to education keeps young people off the streets and constructively occupied. In the long term, they are more likely to be a part of a productive society. Education may not solve crime in the short term, but in the long term, it would certainly reduce it. However, significant challenges continue to persist. Ask yourselves, can the government unlock the potential of education to chart economic development and diversification and the maintenance of a secure state? Violent crime continues to surge, and more than 50% of our GDP is still generated from the energy sector. Think about it. Is education in its current form engendering the creation of a resilient society? Are there sufficient and appropriate opportunities for graduates to contribute to society? The brain drain issue is well documented. In June 2014, the Inter-American Development Bank reported that Trinidad and Tobago has lost more than 70% of its tertiary-level educated labor force to developed countries. 70%. This means that something is not working. Whilst the investment in education is high, the returns are very low. There is significant need in moving forward to not just invest in education, but to create sustainable and meaningful opportunities for graduates to engender long-term economic development. The operative phrase here is long-term. This budget and all other budgets presented in the past suffer from this same weakness: inadequate attention to long-term planning and creation of opportunities for the populace. 70% brain drain attests to this. Whilst we appreciate and commend the many educational initiatives in this budget, we continue to stress on the need for more robust long-term planning, which transcends in 5-year cycles, and delivers sustainable, meaningful, and realistic opportunities for the citizenry. Only this can result in the actualization of the theme which was stated in the budget. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much.
Kendall has 4 seconds on the clock, which I'm told I'm not allowed to give to anyone. Dr. Meredith Patton is the holder of a PhD in criminal justice with a concentration in criminology and deviance. She has worked in the criminal justice and security fields for over 17 years. Aside from teaching in the classroom, she has conducted research and evaluations on prison-based substance abuse programs, security analyses on crime and drug issues surrounding the public housing authorities throughout the United States, and has consulted for a variety of international organizations, including the United States Department of Homeland Security, Interpol, the United Nations, Amnesty International, and Human Rights Watch. Dr. Patton first came to Trinidad and Tobago in 2007 as a research assistant professor charged with conducting evaluations of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Services Transformation Plan, specifically the Model Station Project. She has been with UTT since 2010 and is currently the interim program leader and Associate Professor for the Institute for Criminology and Public Safety. Today, she evaluates the security and public order component of the proposed bill. Please welcome Dr. Patton.
As I set up here, as a criminologist, I'm going to take it, I like to think I followed the rules, so I'm going to take it as a personal and professional challenge to stay within the 7 minutes. Okay. All right, so first I want to talk about the current crime situation and then also what was discussed in the budget and then where I find that there are gaps that should have been addressed. And I think a lot of this we've talked about, there's been a lot of dialogue, so I think a lot of you will agree with me. Murders continue to be a problem. The gang violence in the East-West corridor is certainly plaguing our society, but we must recognize that serious crimes are actually down. Serious crimes are the crimes that actually impact the greater proportion of our population, but we get so muddled down with the headlines of the murders and the serious violent crime. So I just want to say that there are good things that are actually happening when it comes to our national security and our policing. Compared to 2012 to 2013, there was a 26% decrease in serious crimes. Of course, in that same period, there was a 7% increase in murders. So we just have to keep that in mind. Initiatives that were outlined in the budget, oops, sorry, you don't have that yet, was capacity building. What the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has introduced is evidence-based policing. It's a major initiative, it's a very important initiative, and it's being addressed at the line with line officers, so those officers who are out in the field. And it's assisting them in how they go about policing by targeting, testing, and tracking. And it helps with evaluation. It helps officers understand when they go out on the beat, when they are patrolling in hotspots, what they need to gather, how they need to assess the information and evidence that they're gathering, and how it's going to effectively help them in communicating with the public what their job is and what they're doing. This is also assisted with GPS tracking in all of the vehicles for hotspot patrolling, so we can better track what is going on out there and what our officers are doing, which helps with the trust factor that we have such a problem with the communities and the police right now. They also discussed the National Operations Center, which is important because we need communication among our various agencies that are affiliated with national security and public order. And then also there's border security. It's a huge topic. I don't think it's something I'm going to address in the 4.5 minutes I have left. But it's certainly something, because of transnational crime, we do have to address it. They mentioned the Coast Guard and patrol vehicles, but that's been mentioned before. So again, it remains to be seen what is going to be put in place and how effective it's going to be. Okay, in terms of gaps, what I see missing and what I see is a real important part of the dialogue that we have to address are our courts and our prison system. The Chief Justice spoke earlier this week about the allocation of funds to the judiciary and how we need to address it more effectively, and I would agree with that. So it's something that I think should be part of the 2015 dialogue and as we move forward. But in terms of the prisons and by extension the courts, 44% of our prison population is on remand. And cited by various human rights organizations, this is one of the biggest human rights problems that's plaguing countries throughout the world today. So it's something that we have to address. And in comparison to the United States, 22% are on remand. Other gaps that I'd like to address are training, I put that up there, implementation and evaluation. I cannot stress enough, particularly with criminal justice programs, the need to evaluate them. We need to know if what we're doing works, if it's being implemented properly, if it works, and if it's cost effective. We can't keep throwing money out there into programs, not knowing if it's impacting the population that we intended it to impact and whether or not we're getting the outcomes that we intended to have. Okay, and then what should be the message? Well, I think the message should be consistent, there should be recognized cooperation, and of course there should be trust. Far too often when it comes to national security, the general public thinks of the police as our be-all and end-all. They're responsible for our public safety. It's a lot bigger than that, but we know that out on the streets there is a great deal of distrust between the communities and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So I just want to give a little bit of a story of a recent article in the New York Times pertaining to a small city in New Jersey, Camden, New Jersey in the United States. Has a population of 77,000 people. It has been one of the worst crime-ridden small cities in the US for years. Real poverty, high poverty levels and high crime rates. And so they did something. They decided they're going to turn it around. In 2012, there were 21 murders in the summer of 2012. This past summer, there were 6. So that's a big change. So what did they do? Well, they had to revamp their police service. But it was really also about visibility. The police.
With 30 years of experience in the petroleum industry, he has worked in a variety of engineering, commercial, and management roles, both within Trinidad and Tobago and in the United States. He joined our university in 2004, having left BPTT as the Vice President of Organization Transformation. Today, he evaluates the energy component of the proposed bill. Please welcome Mr. Neil Allen.
It's always good to have a target. I won't go near that target of the last speaker. Energy. Thank you. All protocols observed. So I think it was mentioned earlier that energy sector is a big part of the economy. And in the budget, the Minister of Finance used 2 numbers, oil of $80 a barrel, gas $2.75 per MMBTU. What I want to do this morning is to kind of sensitize you around those numbers, because unlike the other speakers, energy is the supply side of the budget. And I want to kind of give you an appreciation of what that supply looks like. Here's oil. You see 3 things there. It's not a homogeneous pie. There's some oil off the East Coast, there's some oil from land and off the Gulf of Paria, and there's also gas. What's significant about that is that our oil is coming from mature fields. Mature fields means that those fields need to have a lot of expenditure to maintain production, because as fields mature, they decline. So we actually have to spend money to maintain that production level, which will provide the revenue. So it is also, we have aging infrastructure. And again, money needed to keep that in good kit to avoid what we saw in some earlier presentations. But also I want to point out that in our oil, there's a gas component, condensate. So even though we think of oil and gas as separate, really, in terms of our production, some of the oil is dependent upon gas production as well. In the area of gas now, gas we do about 4 BCF a day. And on that pie, you see where the big pieces are. LNG, you have a big piece also on manufacture of ammonia and methanol. But there are some challenges in that market. The big challenge in the gas market, 1, shale gas in the US. Shale gas has transformed the US, or is transforming the US from being an importer to an exporter of hydrocarbons, which means there goes the market. Thankfully for the opening up of the Panama Canal, we may get to put gas into other parts of the world. But again, there's a challenge around being of shale gas. You have to keep our eyes on that target. Also, we as a country produce about 1.4 to 1.5 TCF a year. That's a large part of our resource. So again, we have to replace it. There's a cost for doing that. But however, we've been successful because as you can see, we have had some success. The Sabinet well found a TCF. So it found about what we were using a year. Just telling you that it's a dynamic picture. You've got to keep looking to keep producing. So you keep spending money to maintain the income stream as well. We spoke about investments. I can go past this one because that was done by an earlier speaker. But what is significant here is the fact that when you invest, it takes some time for these things to pay out. This area of drilling activity is key, especially when a mature province. We have a mature oil fields, and hence we have to keep the rigs going. And sometimes what has been done as in the budgets, we have incentives to encourage drilling, because this kind of drilling is what maintains that production level, particularly in a mature field. Very important for supporting us is that. What we have had over the last few years, though, we have had some exploration success, which means we have found small pockets, not large things, we have found small accumulations of oil and gas. That is good. It's particularly encouraging when in a mature province you can find new pools, because it means then you have the ability to probably keep sustaining your production levels. But what is called for is continuous spending. So you've got to spend. Deep water, a big thing, the new province. The slide, simple slide, it's very different. Very far out, it's about 100 miles, 200 miles offshore, deep water, 3,000, 9,000 feet of water. So it's different. It will take a lot of money. It takes some time. It's coming. It's not tomorrow. It's out there. Very important we spend the money now. But when you spend money on deep water, you don't get a payout right there and then. The payout comes over time. So very important that we do this. And we have had some bid rounds which are successful. Very good idea here. But what we have to be aware of, it doesn't come cheap and it doesn't come quickly. So we gotta put the money in, do the investing, and also see how it turns out going forward. Also mentioned by earlier speaker, I don't have to mention this one about the downstream activity, how important it is. What's important also is the conversion from gas to liquids in that last slide. Again, mentioned by a last speaker about the supply services. What's key here is the fact that we can be a resource for Suriname, Guyana. We can be a service center in the oil area. Singapore does that very effectively in Southeast Asia. We can be that for developing the businesses in this area. We can be a supply point for the industry. Again, lastly, transition fuels. We have to do this. We have to get rid of that subsidy. Because if you think that our resources are for those who are here and yet to come, we need to be more frugal what we have. The fact that my grandparents are not yet born doesn't mean I can waste the oil. They need to be given the same standard of living as we have gotten from it because we are here now. Have to be frugal. We have to convert. We really need, because I tell you what, subsidies create bad habits. In Jamaica, people turn off all the lights. In Trinidad, we don't, because it doesn't matter. So I really want to appeal to us, yes. In this industry, in the energy, we do have opportunities, we have challenges, but we have to be responsible. So I really employ us to, I think the budget has a good mix, and it's keeping us on track. And you tend to find that over years, the energy sector seems to keep on one path. Consistent and good. Thank you very much.
Dr. Patton still holds the record. Yes. Professor Rodney Ramberly has been involved in tertiary level teaching research, and consulting for the past 40 years. A great portion of this time was spent in Saskatchewan, Canada, where he served as the head of computer information systems at the Saskatchewan Institute of Applied Science and Technology, and as an adjunct professor at the University of Regina. Professor Rambley joined the staff of the... Are you all giving me a cutoff? Professor Rambley joined the Trinidad and Tobago Institute of Technology, the TTIT, our first incarnation of this university, as program coordinator of information technology, or IT as we called it in those days briefly, in 2000. He currently serves as program professor of information and communication technology, now ICT, at UTT. In addition to instructing various courses, Professor Rambley is actively involved with research activities. To date, he has published 6 peer-reviewed articles in international journals, as well as several peer-reviewed papers in conference proceedings, most of which are publications in the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, the IEEE. Professor Rambley's latest research is concentrated in the integration of computational thinking in mathematics curricula. Today, he addresses one of the most relevant and critical components to not only the budget, but to the one thing that is dictating the pace of life in the modern world as we know it. Please welcome Dr. Rambley to deliver on ICT.
Thank you very much, Lana. All protocols respectfully observed. Good morning, everyone. It's indeed my pleasure to be able to have a few minutes to make this presentation on some areas of technology in which we are currently involved, but in which we need to spend a little, in which we need to allocate a little more resources. It goes without saying that technological progress is a considerable driving force behind economic growth and job creation. Technological developments are reshaping many aspects of the world's economies. Technical progress is reshaping many aspects of the world's economies, governments, and societies in developing countries. And governments, businesses, people are harnessing the transformative power of ICT to make public services more efficient, to grow businesses, and to strengthen and expand social networks. It is imperative that we provide adequate technological infrastructure, including access to wireless and wired networks. If we do this right, ICT infrastructure investment can be a key enabler of poverty reduction, a key enabler of a higher quality of life, and shared prosperity in Trinidad and Tobago. I read a recent study done by the World Bank that indicated that a 10% increase in high-speed internet connectivity results in a 1.4% increase in economic growth in developing countries. Well, that is a significant achievement for a price that is not all that formidable to be paid. ICT technologies can be used to transform the delivery of public services, drive innovation and productivity gains, and improve our competitiveness. Now, I've been involved in tertiary education in Trinidad for the last 14 years, and I am convinced that our young people here have the technological savvy to effect this transformation. We have to continue to scale up our connectivity for all of our residents, in particular those in remote areas as well as in Tobago. We at UTT have some challenges in delivering a course from one single location to other multiple sites, and we need to correct this. We can make more effective use of our intellectual capacity at UTT if we harness the power of video conferencing to deliver a course from a single location, a single classroom, to other multiple sites, including Tobago. It is something that I am very concerned about and something that I am feverishly working towards, and I'm hoping that we could accomplish this in this next academic year. Dev, Mirage, that's a hint. But we need to provide adequate infrastructure in order to accomplish this. We need to continue to build on some areas in which we have already established some serious expertise. I'm thinking in particular of security and cryptography. We teach courses in our master's programs, in our master's program in this area. And we have demonstrated some real capacity, some expertise in this area. But we need to continue to build on this area. In most developing countries, computer security has really moved up the corporate agenda. Wireless security will become increasingly more important as we in Trinidad and Tobago see our organizations move feverishly from wired networks to wireless networks. With this exponential growth in smartphones and the expanding use as essential business and personal tools within our organizations in TNT, we need to face up to the necessity that we have to protect the use of these personal devices and their usage. Managing the use of these mobile devices is becoming crucial. We have to ensure that usage complies with company security policies. We need to allocate access rights, manage configurations, and a whole host of activities associated with the use of mobile devices. There are several areas in which we've already made an impact. I don't have the time at the moment to get into some of these, but cloud computing is one that we need to increase our activities in. Big data is another wonderful opportunity for youths to get into, and especially given the fact that our oil industry uses a lot of big data. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to get into a description of big data, but for our young people, that's an area to keep in mind. As we move from IP version 4 to IP version 6, security issues will remain at the forefront. We need to develop our skill sets to manage this transition from IPv4 to IPv6. What have we done in Trinidad to address some of these concerns and to continue to build capacity? Well, with the vision and encouragement of our minister, Knowledge TT was launched just recently. While it has been launched, we have not yet utilize its full capacity. We need to embellish Knowledge TT with content, and many of us have the capacity to provide that content, and we need to. Tamina Industrial Park will pose some very exciting opportunities for us. So these are some areas that we need to work on, folks, and the sky's the limit in terms of what we're capable of doing. Thank you very much for the time.
Dr. Ambley was on time. Hit the clock. As a highly accomplished and internationally respected sportsman with extensive experience in sport management, Mr. Darren Ganga brings expertise not only in sport and sport administration to UTT. He also brings an extensive network of sports personalities and international institutional affiliation. He is recognized for exemplary leadership at the national and international levels and has been awarded the Hummingbird Medal Gold for contribution to Trinidad and Tobago in the area of sport. He has also been appointed as an ambassador for sport by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, to address the area of sport, Mr. Darren Ganga.
Sport is the opiate of the masses. No, it's not Karl Marx. If Provost was here, he would think it's Karl Marx. It's me, Darren Ganga. And the reason why I say this is because I've been able to reap the benefits and the hope and comfort of the benefits of sport. It's the reason for life for a lot of us, and we have our athletic scholarship students who are here. I'd like to say thanks to the moderator and the fellow panelists who came before me, and especially UTT, for this initiative, for engaging faculty, staff, and students in a debate about the budget, which is not just a topic, but a subject matter with tangible and intangible benefits and impacts to each and every one of us. Once more, the government has shown its recognition for the importance of sport within the context of our national framework for development. Ladies and gentlemen, may I take a moment to remind all of us, as my opening statement indicated, that sport is not just about fun and games. Don't get me wrong. I think it's certainly an important aspect for young children. But sport is critical for a number of reasons, and I'll get into some of them. For the development of healthy lifestyles, strong self-esteem, qualities such as teamwork, leadership, discipline, respect, and many others which are essential for swaying our young people away from social ills. It's also a viable career path, and I could attest to that. It's a path to property, beyond the athlete himself. You can work in broadcasting, medicine, marketing, events, technical support, and now all the science and biomechanics behind sport has opened up a whole new window of opportunities for young people. And that's just to name a few. I'd like to take the rest of my time allotted to focus on three aspects of the budget, highlighted by the Honorable Minister of Finance in his budget delivery. Firstly, stadia. Over the last 10 to 15 years, Trinidad and Tobago has had the opportunity to benefit from 5 multi-purpose stadia, which represents a substantial investment into both sport and various communities. The government has recognized the need to upgrade and repair these facilities to bring them to an acceptable standard. I would like to see the maximum utilization of these facilities in order to expedite the return on investment of taxpayers' dollars in the context of both the benefits to the citizenry and also revenue generation. And when I speak about benefits to the citizenry, we must link the core purpose of the facility to other sporting disciplines to maximize use. Example, our tennis center should have squash courts or even a room for table tennis as well. There should also be ongoing maintenance with staff to ensure that there is usability in the long term. Scheduling has been a problem with most of our facilities, and we must ensure that we make the right decisions to accommodate events throughout the year in a decentralized manner. We don't want everything to be happening at the Hasely Crawford Stadium. When I speak about revenue generation, all these facilities should be centers for revenue. There are various events, sporting events, there's coaching and training, as well as other national events can generate these types of revenues. Revenue from entertainment. Have we thought about utilizing these facilities for shows, for corporate events, for sports days, and other corporate events? There are 3 mega projects to be completed in this new fiscal. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the former Minister of Sport for his vision. And I'm not going to speak further on any other aspects of the Ministry of Sport. And I speak of the Aquatic Center, the Cycling Center, and the Tennis Center. And these are all infrastructures to catalyze the following. 1, sport tourism, hosting of international tournaments. We've only had the opportunity to host the Cricket World Cup in 2007. We also had the opportunity to host the Under-17 Football World Cup. These facilities will provide an opportunity for training and pre-season training for international athletes. We have a very intense elite athletes program where athletes get funding for their further development. Now they can take the time to train at home and develop themselves into being better athletes and world-class athletes. I also do not expect that these facilities to be made exclusively for athletes, but they should offer avenues for all citizens to benefit and utilize. Our aquatic center should provide for rehabilitation, for swimming classes, for first aid courses. It should also serve as a hub for secondary schools competitions, university and tertiary education competitions, diving, water polo, synchronized swimming. All these are activities that could surround these mega sporting facilities. Last but not least, this would ensure that my 2 earlier points in that of the benefit to the citizenry and revenue generation will be achieved. The second important area highlighted in the budget is that of the national games. To me, this is a fantastic idea if properly planned and executed. It must have the involvement of the national governing bodies for sport, as we call them, to ensure participation and scheduling. The national games will be a sport tourism product which can have both pull and push characteristics. Pull by the way of attracting top athletes, also families participating, sports enthusiasts attending. We must create a fixed event to be part of our sporting calendar, which is eagerly anticipated. So it can't be a one-off affair. On the push side, we'll allow Trinidad and Tobago to have a platform for showcasing our country as a top sport destination using these facilities I just described. For example, hosting of international swimming competitions and tennis competitions. The national games can create a springboard for our up-and-coming sports stars, and I know that red light is blinking at the back. We would attract scouts who will come here to recruit probably our university students and our athletes for international opportunities. We will spur interest in our nationals who will want to get involved, whether on a volunteer basis or even to participate, to coach, to train at the community level. Many of our peripheral support staff, we have coaches, we have physiotherapists, we have athletic trainers, we have rehabilitation staff. It will provide an opportunity for all of them to learn, to train, to develop. The last point I'd like to make, and it goes with the old saying, you can be a jack of all trades and a master of none. But I want to go further and state, you can never be a jack of all trades and a master of all. And it goes into the point, ladies and gentlemen, of the Honorable Minister of Finance, when he made reference to 5 sporting disciplines to be focused on: cricket, football, basketball, track and field, netball. And it doesn't mean that all the other areas are neglected. In my interpretation, these are areas where we have consistently demonstrated massive potential and interests, and we have achieved a lot of international success. So we must zero in on these resources and have them channeled appropriately so that these 5 areas could accelerate development and success. I can call on numerous examples where this approach has worked. China, table tennis; Russia, gymnastics; Germany, football; Africa, middle to long distance running; Jamaica, right in our backyards; sprint, track and field. So in closing, I can talk about my experiences and the lack thereof of facilities, infrastructure, training and development. And yes, we've had 10 years of unparalleled success as a national cricket team. But Lord only knows, if we had this focused type of approach to sport and to cricket in my particular case, would have been able to achieve a lot more. So with these few words, I would like to say that these 3 points have really excited me, and I'm sure excited a lot of sporting enthusiasts into the next fiscal year. Thank you very much.
I opted to carry the blame for that one. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the really interactive part of the presentation. These interactive sessions are typical of UTT public outreach programs, where, having presented our research, our opinions and ideas, we invite feedback from the participants. I'm going to, before I invite the panelists back to the stage, and we will make some accommodation up here for you, I just want to point out that there are microphones down the middle aisle where we would like very much if you can take your questions, queries, or comments to the microphone and speak to the presenters from there. With your permission, I would also like to acknowledge in our audience the program professor for the Academy for Arts, Letters, Culture and Public Affairs, Professor Hollis Liverpool, who joined us after the start of the program. Welcome, Prof. I'm scared they give me 7 minutes, but I'm told that the arrangement is to have all of the panelists on the stage so that questions can be posed to them. We're just waiting for that to happen. Yeah. Thank you very much. Sorry.
How many are there?
Sorry.
How many?
It's 9.
We need one more.
9?
Yeah.
All right. While our presenters arrange themselves on the stage, can I invite the audience members to approach one of the 2 microphones in the interest of time? We will have a microphone available here for the panelists. And filling in for Professor Valerie Stout will be Ms. Hema Babulal. Are there any questions at this time? We won't put you on the clock. It's a free interactive session. Can we ask that you identify yourself and your organization?
Good morning, Alison Pouchard, Cohort 6, UTT, Masters in Health Administration. But I am very interested in criminology and asking Dr. Patton about her experience, or if any, and what does she think about restorative mediation and reduction in the load of the gaps that you saw in the court system and the prison system?
Well, I have some experience in it, but I'm going to talk specifically to Trinidad and Tobago. And there is an initiative in the prison system right now towards moving towards a restorative justice mechanism, so that part of the problem is, much like other nations throughout the world, is we have a serious overcrowding issue. And so if we can put restorative justice measures into place and work with offenders and victims and other people involved in the crimes, we can hopefully find other resolutions and other ways to try and rehabilitate and come to a consensus that's less punitive, because it is a drain on our resources, but also it's a human rights issue. And just like I talked about the remand, people on remand, and this overcrowding is, once we are in this situation, which restorative justice measures can help us alleviate it a little bit, both physical and mental health deteriorate. When you are sitting in a prison for too long without an outcome to what your current situation is, without that swiftness of the judiciary. And so then it becomes an even drain on the health system, as you would probably know, and then it creates just a cycle in terms of criminality and people coming in and out of prison. So it's definitely something that people have looked at and we're trying to move towards. And, you know, again, we hear things in the budget every year, and it remains to be seen if we're actually going to put it into action.
Thank you, Dr. Patton.
Good day, my name is Stephanie Anthony and I'm a student at Current. I have two questions for Mr. Adrian Bihari, Maritime. What consideration, if any, will be given to students to travel free on the water taxi, just as our senior citizens are given to travel free by showing their ID cards?
Actually, that's a very good question. I'll tell you why. I keep saying at the Maritime campus that when we set up the water taxi system, it was intended that there would be a run from Port of Spain to the National Fisheries Berth, which is located directly opposite to the Maritime campus. So it was intended that it would provide a means of transportation that was quite relevant to maritime studies in Chaguaramas. On the wider question of subsidized transportation for the students, there is already a system in place, I know, that takes account of persons, I think, 60 years and over. I don't know that they have put in any specific system for university students, but it is certainly a good idea because we want to get the students off the road and onto the vessels.
Which leads to my second question, because I live at Mayaro, and in the absence of the highway, which was supposed to be constructed from Mayaro to San Fernando, are there any considerations for the water taxi to travel from Mayaro to San Fernando?
Originally, when we conceptualized the project, it was intended to provide a commuter service from Point Fortin, Labre even, San Fernando, Chaguana, Scuva, Port of Spain, and Chaguaramas. It was not designed to get down to Mayaro because of the oceanographic conditions in that area. But having worked myself for 3 years in Mayaro at Point Galeota, I could easily understand why you would want to have an alternative vessel service in that area. So it is something, the vessels are quite capable of calling at Mayaro. We designed them ourselves in collaboration with the shipbuilder Hostal, So I can attest to the fact that the vessels are quite seaworthy. In fact, they are designed to provide backup service in the event that the main ferry service between Trinidad and Tobago fails. Those vessels can also run to Tobago. So once the demand is there and the government has the initiative to want to create such a service, the vessels are capable of performing.
Stephanie, was it? Stephanie? Tiffany, which program are you registered in? Bachelor's in Sports Studies. Attached to our Corinth campus? Yes. I understand that we have a question from our Strategic Partnership and New Business Ventures unit, and our new Assistant Vice President is going to be the one to pose that question. One of the newest AVPs at UTT.
Good morning, colleagues. My question is respect to the Innovation Fund and projects with respect to renewable energy. I would like to put it to the whole panel to throw some light on the views of the university with respect to the Innovation Fund and some of the projects we are embarking on.
You want to take it? I mentioned it in my presentation, the $50 million fund that has been established by the government. As you know, the UTT is an entrepreneurial institution, and one of our outputs is designed, certainly at the Maritime campus, to create graduates who are interested in opening their own business. So, particularly with respect to the energy sector, oil and gas, shore-based activities, there are a lot of support service companies in Chagaramas, in Point Galeota, in Labre, and you want to grow and develop these small industries, and so that fund will certainly go a long way in helping the weaker firms establish themselves, get on their feet, and so on, and to participate. It's designed, I gather, because it says matching funds, so it's probably like the dollar for dollar program, which was the progenitor to the current GATE system, and that is an initiative that will perhaps grow and develop once there is a demand for it. I don't know if Neil has anything further to add on that particular matter. No? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bihari. Thank you.
Thank you, AVP. Of course. While Alison is making her way to the lectern, the microphone, I just want to remind the panelists that you're free to pose questions to your fellow panelists.
Okay, the recently innovative idea from the cabinet note coming out to health is the extension of primary healthcare centers opening from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. I'm asking our representative from Masters in Health Admin to highlight what are the challenges that you see facing the health sector, the issues that we need to address, if we can bring it to the fore. We know also that obesity and chronic non-communicable diseases are very, very high in incidence right now and prevalence. And so if he sees that this is a way that we will curb this problem or at least make a dent into that problem.
Big question, let me answer it quickly. Basically, we have been focusing largely on secondary and tertiary type of care. We need to move away from that and go back to the basics of primary health care, and primary care especially, and focus on chronic. The main gist of the budget throughout the 5 years, well, the 4 years that the minister spoke about, is chronic non-communicable diseases and communicable diseases. However, as the WHO indicators show, we haven't put in the specific measures to address these. What we were able to do is actually we were able to measure the risk factors, the morbidity, mortality rates and stuff. So we were successful in that, but we have not been able to correct these and reverse these trends. So each year we are continuously faced with these increasing in non-communicable diseases. The main drugs that we learned in our program is to focus like on chronic care model, where we increase decision support, increase our delivery systems, increase self-care management. So we teach our clients and patients to be able to see about themselves and monitor themselves effectively. It all comes down to how our policy is made. And we learned also that health policy is basically trying to develop policy is basically a rational process, because the basic evidence base and stuff don't always go into what comes out from the government. And this is done generally. So it tends to be more on a political slant, where you try to appease the population as such, but which is understandable, because as the Honorable Prime Minister says, it's an election, but because you have to try to get back into government. But we really should try to do some other primary healthcare initiatives. If we really look at the percentage that has gone towards prevention as compared to what we are doing now, care and treatment, you'll see a vast disproportionate of the budget. Less than 3% probably goes to, and this is also in the European community. When we looked at it, European community also has this problem where we focus heavily. And we can't continue like that, because if there's some downturn in the economy, definitely healthcare will suffer. Because just to maintain some of these hospitals that we are building are extremely exorbitant costs. So I hope I answered the question.
Professor Valerie Stout.
I just wanted to make a comment on your little part of your answer on policy. It's not about appeasing the population, it's about satisfying the population, especially with something in healthcare. And it ought not to be, well, at UTT in the environmental section, we are going into policy development for recycling of cooking oil, recycling of organics, in order to be able to separate organic waste from non-organic waste, so that when it gets to the dump, they go in different directions, because the organic waste, when fermented, would produce methane. And even if you don't try to make a commercial success out of the methane, at least you'll stop some of the fires, because landfill gas has a tendency, will be methane, and has a tendency to have these spontaneous fires, as well as fires brought about when people burn plastic. And the methane is around, so it just expands, and then you get all the pollution along that east-west corridor from the Beetham dump, or you get the Forest Park landfill closing. But in going into policy, what one does is you use a contingent valuation approach, whereby you present several different policies to the population, to the people the policy will impact. And then the government, so what you do is you present to, this is our intention, and of course it will also be the intention of the MHA program at UTT, that we present evidence-based research or conclusions to the government. So in the case of a policy, a health policy, one develops from using other templates elsewhere, things like access, how much is paid, etc., to the population. You do a contingent valuation survey, you analyze it, you present it to the government. We ought not to leave it to be a political exercise. You can do town hall meetings, so it doesn't have to be something structured. It could be something where people are able to give their opinions, but it's something we can do and should do. So don't despair about that. But I wanted to ask one other thing. I don't know if it was in the budget, because I didn't really look at healthcare, and I haven't read the whole budget. But there's a push now to have this online healthcare. And as you mentioned, that these physical spaces are so expensive to maintain, this is a possibility. And I think in biomedical engineering, we do have a research project which is starting this year to look at the possibilities of somebody going into a health center in, say, Mayaro, and being able to present their symptoms to a GP in the States, for example. And in this case, the Mayaro Health Facility will only need to be populated by, let's say, nurses. You will not need to have a doctor there because then you're just able to set up. So this is a challenge for the ICT as well, because this distance medicine thing is going to be very contingent on the ICT infrastructure. So those two things, and then we don't need to spend all that money on buildings, and we could give people better care. You know, so one thing you can ask in terms of presenting this to the public is what sort of appeal this would have for the public, whether they prefer some sort of hands-on improvement or hands-on examination, or if they're willing to present themselves to somebody who is at the other end of a screen, you know. So in short, we need to ask the public what they want. And it's, again, it's not about appeasing them, it's about satisfying them, because that is what our government is supposed to do.
Thank you, Prof.
Good morning. Well, good morning again, everyone. I have a series of different questions posed to each one of the, well, to the respective presenters. Right. So I will just go in series as they came in. So to Mr. Stewart, you talked about healthcare. Do you see that the budget presents any way of standardizing healthcare in the sense of where we will be looking to make nurses or doctors bring students to UTT to be educated as nurses or doctors, where they will be then be spread out throughout the Caribbean, in the sense that we can maybe partnership with a health facility or a country like Cuba. I don't know how many the political or the affiliation between Trinidad and Cuba is, but do you see that as a possibility where we can standardize possible healthcare?
Yes. Well, firstly, the University of West Indies, I think the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education needs to work a little closely. I say this because presently we are graduating a number of pharmacists and dental technicians and stuff, and they are finding it extremely difficult to get jobs out there. However, we're extremely short-staffed in critical areas that we presently need. So we have a lot short of district health visitors, and we need these district health visitors to get out into the field and do the work. And it will also help with task shifting. So the doctors, as my professor was speaking to, you need to do some task shifting. So you don't need a doctor who takes 5-6 years registration to be in the community itself. A district health visitor could take up that slack. A good thing that the minister did recently with the Nursing and Midwives Act is bringing in a nurse practitioner, and that person will be able to do some of the skills that the doctors presently do. So and this was a long in coming, so I must commend the minister highly for this. I hope I answered your question. And the only other, I think my colleague also said, with regards to online, where the patient interacts with foreign persons, we presently have that with the telemedicine, but that is predominantly for childcare, where the sick kids of Toronto and stuff. So I'll pass over the mic now.
To Mr. Bihari, who presented on transport, do you see or do you foresee any future budgets where the Tobago ferry will be kind of standardized? Because as we know, there's a problem between Trinidad and Tobago as with respect to getting materials and certain things to Tobago. Do you see that in the future that the budget will be able to allocate a ferry service, a proper ferry service in the future?
When you say standardize, right now the model that they're using for the operational aspect of the ferry service is that there are two 90-meter passenger fast ferries, the TNT Spirit and the TNT Express, and they carry some vehicles, so passengers and vehicles. And now the Superfast Galicia has replaced the TNT Warrior, the Warrior Spirit, sorry. That was the least vessel for cargo handling, moving cargo between Trinidad and Tobago. Now the Superfast Galicia is a much larger vessel, and it also provides accommodation for 120 traffickers. So that is the model that they have agreed upon, and the management of the passenger and vehicle ferries is Bay Ferries from Canada, and the local management under Leon Grant at the Port Authority is responsible for the cargo ferry. That is a pretty large vessel that should be able to cater for the cargo handling requirements running between Trinidad and Tobago. There is a company that the Port Authority has formed called TTIT, Trinidad and Tobago Inter-Island Transport Services Limited. And that company, at some point in the future, will be divested. At present, the Port Authority operates the Inter-Island Ferry Service as an agent on behalf of the government. So it's earning a commission for providing that service. If they go to full-fledged divestment and they form a private company, you have to consider what would be the interest of the THA in that process, because the THA right now plays an instrumental role in terms of decision-making regarding the fast ferry as the lifeline between Trinidad and Tobago. So those are some of the main issues with respect to running that service there.
Okay, thank you. To Ms. Patton, you talked about security and the troubles that at least is presented at the national level. Do you think that the budget could allocate funds or a type of program that could see a reduction in the prison service where prisoners are rehabilitated? Do you see a feature in that in respect to the budget?
Well, we have to look at the Constitution and the laws first. That's a long process. There are programs that can certainly be put in place where, much like the restorative justice programs that we talked about earlier with the earlier question, there's also, we have drug courts that are introduced in San Fernando as a way to divert people away from the prison service and into treatment. So there's a variety of different things depending on the actual crime and also depending on the circumstances of the person and the level of criminality they may have and their history in terms of contact with the criminal justice system. So that's all of the different agencies would have to work together to ensure that they come into place, but I don't see why we can't start that. I would emphasize again that if these programs are put in place, that we actually evaluate them rather than just putting the cart before the horse and keep things going regardless of reaching the intended outcomes.
To Mr. Allen, who presented on energy, you touched a little bit about the different types of, the energy market and how it should be supplying Trinidad and Tobago. But as an entrepreneur and as UTT as an entrepreneur university, could there possibly be a course or maybe a way of bringing the energy sector into the hybrid car sector, meaning that we make a course or a possible program within UTT? Do you think that's a possible field in the future?
You're saying that to create a hybrid car?
Yeah, I'm referring to the hybrid. There was a discussion on the hybrid cars that will be possible on the market in Trinidad and Tobago. Is there a possibility that training of maybe UTT graduates or students in this market?
Well, I'm sure, in fact, if that comes about, it'll come about actually in the utilities area, because they'll probably get trained on one of the utilities program, mechanical or electrical. So that'll actually be the area where they'll do it as another skill they'll add to their program to make sure these graduates can also service and work on hybrid cars. Yes.
We have one more question, and I'm seeing Professor Liverpool approaching the microphone. So, unfortunately, we have room for just one more question.
Madam Moderator, thanks a lot. I just want to throw out one point to the panelists who were very, very good this morning. When I looked at the budget, I saw no area marked culture. And I said, I felt glad. I'll tell you why. Because there's a school of thought coming out of Harvard that says in the past 2 years that all education is culture. That everything we do in education is culture. That what we are doing at UTT here is really passing on culture to people. And in a way then, when we look at IT or the Tobago boat or the ferry, etc., it's a matter of culture, or sport, it's all culture. In the sense that, how do we use the Tobago boat? Do we mash it up? How do we use crime? For example, we can go to New York and solve crime, probably because we have wide streets, but they mightn't be able to solve crime in Laventille with those thinly populated areas, those thickly populated areas and those narrow streets. In other words, all of that is a matter of culture. So perhaps the government is wise to understand that the entire budget, whether it be IT, whether it be energy, all the people down there with the mud and how they use the streams and all the environment, etc., and all the what Professor Stout was showing. I'm glad Professor Stout started with Peter Minshall, because she sees that all that is culture, and the entire thing is culture. So to a large extent, perhaps in the future, there'll be no room for energy and this and that and sport. But the entire budget is how we use culture and how we pass on culture to these people. Because if it's a matter of culture to understand, how do you make use of the resources that government gives to us? So perhaps the government is wise not to put an area mark culture.
Transcends. Thank you, Prof. Panelists, thank you. Audience, thank you. I know there was one more question, but the president really has to run off. What I would suggest you do, though, is let's not disband the panel. And if you have further questions or comments, we can probably consider entertaining that afterwards in a much more informal way. But at the particular point in time, I want to hand the lectern over to our President, Professor Narayan Singh, to do the closing remarks and the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Lana. I know we have far exceeded our time limit, and the extent of discomfort is related to this time factor. So I've placed my remarks in the waste paper basket, and just a few general comments. I'll be extremely brief. First of all, we have had a lot of pre-budget debates and post-budget debates. It's now become part of our culture, Professor Liverpool. But those debates, which are very important, really have never focused, to me, on the most important segment of our population, and that's you, the students, the fertile brains and the future of our nation. And UTT is the only institution really in Trinidad and Tobago that really has this post-budget debate that draws our young people. Because it's the young people, the young people of our nation, who are going to be the future leaders and be the ones to transform our nation. So I think UTT needs to be commended for that. And as I sat there and listened, and I said this last year, we have to do some changes to the format of our programs, and one of it will we have to be involved our students in the presentation and part of the panel. So we are going to do that. We must. Because the future is our business at UTT. So I want to thank all the presenters. My first experience of this was just last year, and I must say that, the presentations this year were super. really, really far-reaching, and I hope some of these will be placed on the intranet and get widespread public attention. So we want to commend all of you for your excellent presentations, and we hope that they have fell on fertile airs, right? So thank you very much. We also want to thank, of course, all those at UTT, Marketing and Communications, Business Development and Entrepreneurship Unit, and others, right, for their devotion to duty. They have been really carrying UTT forward in terms of the public relations, and they do an excellent job, and we want to commend them. Of course, we also want to thank our Ministry of Education, who has partnered with us and as a medium for our interaction with our secondary schools. So we want to thank the Ministry of Education for their assistance in these events, not only this particular one, but in a number of events that we're having. And of course, we want to thank the students. It's a pity we didn't get as many as we wanted, but the work must go on. So we want to thank you for coming here. We hope that you have benefited tremendously from the exercise here. We also, of course, want to thank the media. And I make this appeal whenever I say a few words, that the media has a critical role to play in the transformation of our society. And on Thursday, we had a very important event at UTT, extremely important. And that was the launch of our Innovation Center. And that's the good news that we needed to bring to the population of Trinidad and Tobago, because it's innovation and creativity that is going to transform our society. And today we have some good news about these presentations and the assessment. So we want to partner with the media to bring the good news on a daily basis. And the reason I'm saying the good news, I think somebody told me in the 70s there was a pop tune that was top of the chart called "Is There Any Good News Today?" And the song was composed as a reflection of the wars in Vietnam. Every day we are hearing about this, and somebody said, isn't there something good to report to the people? And I say this with sincerity, that we need, both the media and all of us need to project also the good news. So every day we should see a section on the good news today, and this could be one of it. Now, this whole exercise here, and many other exercises that UTT are involved in, will be meaningless if there's not sustainability. And I want to appeal to our young people today. When you leave here, I want you to go back to your class environment and you start the discussions. Any important point that was raised here, continue the dialogue. Listen to the opinions of those around us. We need to engage ourselves in constructive discussions. And this, I think, is something that we sorely lack in this particular society, engaging our folks. So I want you to go in your immediate classrooms, into schools, and start the dialogue on any topic that of importance, critical importance. Right? But more importantly, as young people in a technologically driven world, you need to make use of the social media in carrying out this kind of dialogue. It's all available. You use it every day. Whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, etc., you're using it. So why can't we put up something that is of national importance, that's nation building, put it there, and you start the dialogue? And I was just reading of some activity that took place in the United States, where they were trying to sort of question the performance of their representatives. And of course, we have just recently debated heavily the right to recall. How many of us were involved in constructive discussions? And you know what they did, colleagues, in the States? The citizens of that particular state decided they're going to do a poll and to put up a set of key performance indicators they expect of their representative. The citizens did that. And therefore, they pulled out of this, and they developed a set of key performance indicators they expect of our leaders. And this was on the internet. And immediately, those representatives had to abide by this. Where did the power come from? The citizens. And could you imagine what if we can start some of these little ideas here in Trinidad and Tobago, and it does not cost any money? And I really want to see so that everything that's done here, we want the dialogue to continue. Otherwise, it's just another talk shop, and we will not have benefited from this exercise. So as we move forward, I just want to mention one other bit of information is concerning UTT. UTT is unique in terms of education institutions in the region. And if you look at this mission statement, and I'm saying especially to the students, it's an entrepreneurial university. And the future economies of the world will be those, the successful economies will be those which use knowledge and use that knowledge to create wealth for the benefit of all its people. That is where it is. It's not oil and gas. It's not silver or gold or uranium or platinum. It is knowledge that is going to create the wealth for the people. And where is that going to come from? From our learning centers. The most powerful computer, someone said, is right here. And you don't have to buy it. And that is not the possession of people in the highly developed countries. Any country has that wealth, that human capacity to create wealth for its people. So there should be absolutely no excuse for us becoming a powerful economic nation. And I want to, and what UTT is doing, UTT as an entrepreneurial university, is geared towards doing this sort of thing. And that is why the programs we offer at UTT are unique at universities. And they are related to growth and development. And I just want to mention, we have the Creativity Campus. Today, UTT is a household name in the Caribbean in terms of fashion and animation. And the fashion industry is where a lot of the wealth being created, isn't that so? It's not the BSc in social sciences or anything like that, you know. Creativity, and that's a growth pole of the country. Then we have the Maritime Campus, right? Trinidad and Tobago, because of its unique geographical position, must be the center for air, sea, and land transportation. So we see we have the maritime sector, and within the next year, we have now the aviation campus, because aviation is critical to development. Whatever sector you're dealing with, you need a strong aviation industry. Then, of course, we have the energy sector. We don't have to see about that. Manufacturing and design. Then we're having the Tamana campus to be opened next year, which is going to be our innovation and design campus. Very, very important. So notice the nature of the programs we are offering. Very, very relevant. And these are the skill sets which are required for tomorrow. So with those few words, I want to, commend everyone for the presence here, for the presentations, and you for being present here. And we look forward to the future. And I just want to end with something, because it's all keeping. One question I wanted to ask, I don't think the budget addressed two critical issues. And one of that is, how do we improve our productivity as a nation? You could have all the grandiose plans, and if you do not look at productivity, so the overarching theme to me should have been productivity, or rate of return. And I think we should really do some studies. What value do we get back from every dollar we invest in a project? My own crude estimate, if we get 40 cents per dollar, I think we get a lot. So we have to address the problem of productivity in a holistic way, and this is overarching. And the other one, which is really hitting the news now, have we addressed in the budget or taken into consideration what is called preventative maintenance, health safety issues across the society? These are two things which I feel really should be also, addressed on a national level, if all of these plans will have any meaning whatsoever. So again, we want to thank you, and my little quote is this: silver and gold have we none. Oil and gas will run out soon. But what we bring to you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, is knowledge. Knowledge which can be converted into wealth creation for the benefit of all our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the formal end of today's program. We want to thank all of you for attending. I don't know if the panelists want to make themselves available for questions or feedback. Like I said, in a more informal way, probably outside, because we do have some refreshments available in the foyer. So feel free to meet and chat with them on the outside. Again, thank you again for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event hosted by the University of Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you.